Hello, I'm Vanessa. Welcome back to the podcast. My guest today is Steven Ross, and Steven is a real estate agent, an author, a speaker, and a coach. And Steven and I go way back, like really, really far back, all the way back to 2003 when I was an operations manager for his business coach, Steve Shull. And we've stayed in touch over the years. And so I am beyond thrilled to have him on the podcast today. So today we're going to talk about doing the hard things, the things that separate high achievers from the average Joe. You see, Steven's main prospecting method is door knocking. And in his career, he's knocked on over 125,000 doors and spoken to over 40,000 people. Now that's impressive on its own, but add to that Steven is a low-key introvert, and it makes you want to know how the heck he did it. And so, in fact, he's written a book on it. It's called Doors Open When You Knock, and it's a fantastic read. And before you tune out, if you're not a door knocker, this book is not really about door knocking. Door knocking is a metaphor for doing the hard things. So I'm really excited to dig into this conversation today and unpack some of the life lessons and lessons that Steven learned while door knocking. So welcome.
Thank you, Vanessa. I cannot believe we've known each other. It's weird to think that I've known
We're not old enough.
This long.
We're not old enough to have known each other that long.
I know everyone else listening is like, we don't care, but I care. It's crazy to think.
Yeah, it is. So let's just start with your background. How did you get into real estate? And then how did you choose door knocking of all things as your prospecting method?
Well, I got my license March 15th, 2005 in Southern California. It's where I lived. And right in those days, and certainly in Southern California, if you were alive and breathing and had a real estate license, you were pretty much doing business. And I looked around and I thought, how hard can this be? Look at all these knuckleheads just killing it. So it seems, right? So as I was winding down a corporate career, I was in my 30s, I wasn't winding down. I was just looking for what's next. I thought, well, geez, how hard can it be? I'd bought and sold a few homes. And of course, we all know it's way harder than it looks. And, for me specifically, I was leaving, I had done lots of things, but the thing I was doing right before real estate is I was a chief technology officer for a medical startup. And one of the things we were doing in the early 2000s was raising money. And there's only so many places you can go to raise 20 million or $10 million. And when you were done raising that, you were kind of that was it. And we raised some money, we did okay, but not what we had intended. And whatever I was going to do next, it had to be unlimited. Like there couldn't be just like a finite prospecting pool. It needed to be much bigger. And real estate just looked like a natural fit for me in the sense that I used to joke, if you've ever, anyone listening, if you've ever flown into Los Angeles, you sort of fly over, and this is where I used to live. When you fly into Los Angeles, you fly over Los Angeles for like 20 minutes or longer, right? There's just endless houses. And I remember flying in thinking, wow, I'll never run out of houses to sell or doors to knock on. Now, I wasn't thinking about knocking on doors, but I did have that thought, like there's no end of, supply of homes to sell. So that's kind of what got me into real estate. And then I've already forgot. Did you ask me something else?
Yes. Why did you pick door knocking?
Oh, right. Yeah. Why did I pick door knocking? Why would an antisocial introvert, someone who's actually the worst person to be a real estate agent, because I don't like doing anything social, which is what the typical real estate agent likes to do. Why did I pick door knocking? And I didn't pick door knocking. Door knocking picked me. And I say that because, as you alluded, I met Steve Shull, and he said it's a very simple business: knock on heads, knock on doors, pick one. I tried knocking on heads, but as I said, I'm an introvert. I'm a little antisocial. And I just didn't have a big friend base. I just was not very social. Like I was running out of people to talk to, and I was going to fail. And I thought, well, I guess I should try this knocking on doors thing, which didn't sound good either, by the way. I just want to, it's not like, yay, I can't wait to go knock on doors. No, I was not excited one bit. But I was it really came down to, do I want to feed my 3 kids? I want to make this business work and feed my 3 kids, or do I want to quit, give up, and go find another job? And I didn't want to do that. So I chose door knocking, sort of reluctantly.
So how many doors do you knock on per year?
Well, up to COVID, so I'll just say up to COVID, because COVID has sort of shifted things, at least temporarily. I made it a practice. I put it in my schedule to knock 5 days a week. That was my schedule. I'd have to think about my days in LA, but certainly my days in Colorado, I averaged about 150 days a year. So you figure there's, what is it, like 200 and something. I mean, I always to plan on working 40 weeks a year. I mean, because when you think about it, the first 2 weeks of January are shot. The couple weeks in the summer are shot. Memorial Day weekend's kind of a weird week. You got Thanksgiving week. I mean, there's all these holidays. So, I didn't want to work 24/7. So, you figure you're going to work 40 weeks. That's about 200 days. And, so if I was knocking on 150 days, I mean, that was about 40 weeks, because if I missed a day here or there. And on any given day, my goal was to knock, not necessarily the number of doors. It was, I mean, I tried it a different ways. I tried, all right, I'm just going to go until I talk to X number of people, or, sometimes I tried number of doors, but mostly it was either how many people can I talk to, or I'm just going to go out for X time. I'm going to go out from 11 to 1 or 11 to 2 or 11:30 to 2, whatever. It was mostly, in the last few years, what worked better for me was the time block. And I say that because there's nothing wrong with setting goals like, all right, I'm going to talk to 10 people or 20 people or whatever the number was. But as I built my business and the people that I was talking to were people that I had met before, I felt like if I knock on your door, Vanessa, and we talk for an extra 5 or 10 minutes, I didn't want to be sitting there thinking, I got to get to the next door, because that's not serving the person I'm there with in the moment. And I found it to be much more important or essential that I connect with the people that I'm there to connect with. And so I set myself with a time block, and then I didn't care so much about the people. If I was at Vanessa's door an extra 5 minutes, wasn't a big deal. So I went through a lot. I mean, what I'm basically saying, it evolved over time. And like anything, if you're an open house expert, if you work your database, if you throw parties, whatever you do, it's an evolution. How you start is not necessarily where you end up. If you're paying attention, you're getting better and more effective, more efficient. And that's certainly how it was for me.
So you talk about the paradox of choice and the idea of decision fatigue. And, as part of your getting started, trying to figure out, what do I bring? When do I go? What do I say? I think that's a really relatable experience for anybody who is trying to do something like this in their life. Can you talk about those early days and how you sort of sorted out your when, what, where, how, and all of that?
I'm still sorting it out. I mean, I have it sorted out, but as you were asking me that question, what hit me is I don't talk a lot about that, and most people don't. And I think that it is probably one of the most debilitating things that's undistinguished, because most of us don't think about it, but having too much choice is a massive problem. It is a massive problem, because you wake up, well, what should I do? And if you don't know what to do, the universe will give you something to do, and it's probably not what you should be doing. Or, hey, should, like what's critical to your overall success, well-being, and so forth. And it's like, well, just think about being healthy. There's a lot of ways to be healthy. If you made someone's listening today, they woke up, they're like, I'm going to be healthy. I'm done eating crap. I'm going to be healthy. Well, good luck with that. What does that mean? Is it what you eat? Is it what you exercise? I mean, there's too many choices. And so the same thing in real estate, there's too many choices to be successful. And I'm not even saying there is no one way, really. It's so easy to jump from one thing to the next. oh, I heard this great podcast. I heard this Facebook video. I heard this YouTube video about so-and-so does this. Let me try it. I mean, that's like the worst thing we can do to ourselves. Let me try something, because trying sort of implies checking it out. Yeah, I'm gonna check it out. I'm gonna check out doing real estate for a little while. I mean, there's no commitment behind it. And as you know, having been around this business a long time, checking this business out or trying things out just doesn't work. And it doesn't mean you have to know for sure up front what's going to work for you. But this constantly trying out is just like a death knell, right? It just is.
And I can understand the allure of that, because let's be real, doing the same thing that's hard every single day is boring, right? Cold calling is boring. Door knocking is boring. It's boring.
Yeah, I have to stop you. I know you have a
Yeah.
thought, but I just want to highlight. I cannot tell you how many times, right? I've knocked on doors more than 2,000 times, right? I've lost track of the number of days because it was sort of irrelevant. I should go back and add it up. I cannot tell you how many times I have gone out to the doors. I'm getting ready to go to the doors. I'm like, what am I doing for like the umpteenth time? This is like ridiculous. I'm so sick and tired of the same old, get in my shoes, get in my car, blah, 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 blah. In fact, I remember one time I took one of my kids, it was like during the summer, I took them door knocking. We went down one block. So like 20 minutes, maybe one block. This is my middle son. He's like, this is so boring. I have no idea how you do this all day. It is boring. I got it. So what?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is one of the big things that I wanted to talk to you about. How do you get past that? Because I think the shiny object syndrome for most entrepreneurs, most business people, certainly most salespeople, is really hard to deny, right? They want to do what's next. They want to try something different because it's shiny and new. So what were you able to do differently? Or what, maybe we should talk about your why. And maybe that's where this comes from, understanding why you're going to do this boring, hard thing that you don't want to do every single day. Because I think that's the magic sauce. How did you not just trade that in for something that seemed more interesting? What kept you going over and over and over again?
Let me just say the first thing is you can do what's boring, or you can do just as what you said, shiny, new, and exciting. Shiny, new, and exciting gets you burnt out, stressed out, in chaos, running from thing to thing, no predictability. Boring gives you predictability. Boring gives you a life outside of real estate, because I knock on doors from 11 to 2, 150 days a year. I don't have to do anything else, which means I can do anything else I want, which is a problem, right? We went back to too much choice, right? But I do the things that Steven likes to do, right? When my kids were younger, I'd spend a lot of time with them. I'd take them to baseball, dance, religious school, all that other stuff. I was home every night for dinner. I got to run in the afternoons. Let me tell you, there's nothing better than running on a fall afternoon in Colorado with the leaves changing. I mean, there's so many things I get to do because I do what's boring and unexciting.
Can we just stop and just let that sink in? I get to do the things I want to do because I'm willing to do the thing that's boring, that makes everything else possible. I think that is so important to keep in mind. So thank you for saying that. I want to back up just a little bit. And you talk in the book about starting with your why, right? We're all Simon Sinek fans. And I think this is so important for your personal life, your professional life, sales. How did you tap into, what was your why, if you don't mind sharing? And how did you tap into that when things were boring and hard?
Yeah, I mean, my why for getting into real estate was I didn't want to travel anymore. My third child had just been born, and I wanted to be home raising my kids. I decided, right. So they were newborn, 3 and 5, or 2 and 5 essentially. And I wanted to be a dad, right? I wanted to be home, wanted to be with my kids. I like being a parent. And real estate seemed like a fit for that. So, all right, well, if I want to be a dad, I got stuff to provide, right? So I still got to make money, but then my time is most important. So I didn't want to work weekends, didn't want to work nights, and which meant I needed to be effective during the day and during the week. And, with good coaching and guidance and mentors, I realized that that was absolutely possible. This was not a new thing. So, all right, so I'm going to go knock on doors. It's not new. It's not exciting. It's not glitzy. It's not leveraged in the sense that, right, you put a Facebook ad or a YouTube video and you get 1 million, which that stuff didn't even exist when I started. But on the other hand, I became an expert very quickly, because when you're out walking the neighborhood, talking to people, right? What's our job as a real estate agent? Is I don't know if you remember our old friend, Fred. He's not old, but known him a long time. Fred Wilson, our job is to connect people and property. And as a real estate agent, and when you're out in the neighborhoods, there's the people and there's the property. And so if you're paying attention, you get to be really good, really fast in terms of understanding the dynamics, what's making people move. And so you can be very effective. And right, so all of those things played into my ability to have time off and then do the other things that were most important to me. I mean, because inherently I'm kind of lazy, right? Some people some people can't sit still. I get it. I'm not one of them. I can sit still, no problem.
Yeah. So you figured out how to give yourself that space. This isn't relevant to the book, but I have to talk about this, how you were able to set up your business so that you weren't working nights and weekends, because we both know plenty of agents who do not believe that is possible. They believe in their heart of hearts that they must be available 24/7 to their clients, that their assistants need to be available 24/7, and that no matter what, if they weren't going to have business, it has to be, if they're going to make money, they have to be available 24/7. Can you please talk about that and help dispel that myth? How did you service your clients and build your business without working nights and weekends?
Sure. And, this is not Steven's, I didn't originate this thought, right? I helped refine this for myself from others. So this is not new. So I'm not saying that I created this and, everyone do what I do. It's not what I'm saying, but I did apply it. And what I learned over time, I didn't get it in the beginning, but being on call 24/7 as a value proposition is the same as going to Walmart for the lowest price, right? It's a commodity. It's a commodity. And the other piece that I learned was, and Steve used to say this all the time. This is alluding to Steve Schul, how Vanessa and I met. Houses don't bleed to death, right? There are no real emergencies in real estate. And I did get that very on, that people, it really is not going to be a disaster if I don't answer my phone at 8 p.m. And I'm not saying I had that nailed down perfectly in the first 1, 2, 3 years, but certainly by year 4 and 5, I had gotten very clear that being on call was not going to be for me, because it took away from the reason I wanted to be in business.
And I think that's sort of the paradox, right? Most people get into real estate because they want to make a lot of money and they want to have freedom and flexibility. And then they just end up working all the time and burning themselves out. So is there a conversation that you would have with clients when you started to work with them to help manage their expectations about when you were available? How did that sort itself out?
Sure. Yeah. No, I forgot that I didn't even allude to any of that. So it's a couple things, right? Like I said earlier, it isn't, we all evolve. If we're, paying attention, we evolve hopefully in the direction we want to be going. And how can I really be off and be at peace? And the best way to do that is to tell people up front, this is when I work. Coming from a corporate world, I was used to working days and not weekends and not nights, maybe on occasion, but not as a regular practice.
Right.
And so I would just start telling people, and then I would leave a message on I did the, hi, it's Steven Ross. It's Friday, whatever the day was. I'm unavailable, return all calls on Monday, or whatever my message said. I can't quite remember. And, but now I would say in the last several years, I just tell people up front, I work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and available by Saturday by appointment. And Sunday is my day off. And I can tell you that most of my clients, if they call me like at 5, they're like, I know it's the end of your day. I'm so sorry to bother you. So it's awesome, right? When your clients respect your time, I respect them. I'm not sending them messages at 9 p.m. They're tired. They've had a long day. And then, I can't reach them, but I have 2 phones. And I know you can do this with 1 phone, but I have a business line and a personal line. And so when I'm not working, the business phone goes away and I still have my personal phone. So my kids and my partner and my parents and everyone, I can still function without having to see who's texted me or who's called me. And for me personally, that works great because it's very, knocking on doors is simple. Everything I do, I try and keep it simple. It's a very simple exercise. Here's the phone that I don't want to be answering. Stick it over there. I don't have to look at it. I can shut it off or whatever. And then I'm not tempted to look at email. So on my personal phone, I don't even have my work email. So I can't even check email if I wanted to. It's just not there. So I've just compartmentalized my life so that I'm not distracted by things I shouldn't be worried about in that moment. Right. It's the same thing at the doors. It's, what's the beauty of being at the doors? There's nothing to distract me.
Yes. And that is the challenge with cold calling, right? You're on your computer, you're at your desk, your phone is there, you make a call, you get a little bored, you check the news, you make another call, you get a ding, and your productivity is shot. I think that you're right. That is a brilliant perk of the doors. Before we move off from the subject, because what we're talking about right now is something that this is a conversation I have with clients all the time because they think they need an assistant who is always flexible. Flexible means on call all the time because they are. And then I know people like you who have learned to do this business at a high level and keep it Monday through Friday. So have you ever had a client fire you because you weren't available, or have you ever missed something that turned out to cost you money because you weren't available? Like, is there a cost to this? Because I know people are thinking like, nobody could never afford to do that. I would definitely lose that deal or that client.
I mean, I have a couple things to say about this. The first thing I'm going to say is if your concern is that your client isn't going to work with you because you're not available on Sunday or Saturday, whatever your day out or both days off, then is that the client you want? And the answer for me is I do not want that client, because my life is much bigger than one client. There are plenty of clients who respect me and my time and what I provide for them. And if I have a client that doesn't respect those things, they're not my client. I mean, that's totally fine, but I'm going to save my life, my time, my aggravation. I don't want to be aggravated. There's enough to be aggravated about in life. I'm not going to add aggravating clients to it.
Well, and that's one of the other beautiful things about having a consistent prospecting method. That that's not your last client. That's not your last deal. You have a method, that more business is coming in. And so you can let go of people who aren't the right fit and open up space for the people who are, which is a really beautiful thing.
Well said. Yep.
So one of the other things you talk about in the book, you reference the book Atomic Habit, which I love. I think that was a great book. And one of the things you zeroed in on was something that was really resonated with me, this idea of creating an environment that supports the habit. There's this quote that says, environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior, which was one of those things that you kind of know, but then you see it on the page and like the light bulb goes on and you think, well, of course, that makes so much sense. So can you talk about some of the ways in which you created an environment that supports your habit of door knocking?
Yeah. I mean, you nailed it on the head. When I read that in the book, I'm like, well, duh. I mean, I've been doing that for however many years, but I never could articulate it the way James Clear did, right? I was like, oh, well, he gets credit. He wrote it, but it's not like it wasn't like a secret.
Right.
And you just, and it's just some of these things where it's just like, God, I didn't quite see it that way. But for the doors, like I just remember early on when I was still in California, and it's not that I had a home office, but I still like to work from the office. And so I lived in one part of the Conejo Valley and the office was in the other part of the Conejo Valley. It was like maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 miles away. And didn't really knock too many places by the office. And so I would go to the office and work in the morning and then print my door knocking stuff. And then I go to the doors and then realize I had messed something up or forgotten something. Or then, something else would happen, or I'd forget my shoes, or I'd forget, or my name tag or my hat. And I started to look at like all the things. And I also talk about resistance, which is from Stephen Pressfield. I just looked at all these things that would keep me from doing what I was supposed to be doing, which is knocking on doors, right? Think about it, right, Vanessa? It's simple. You drive into the neighborhood, get out of your car, and you just start walking. And then an hour or two later, you're done. You get back in your car and you leave. It's not very difficult. It's really quite simple. And there's nothing to get in the way once you get out of the car, right? Because all the things that distract Steven, electronics, clothes, coffee, food, because I drank coffee and food, you got to go to the bathroom, right? All the things that distract you, not at the doors. And I don't have my phone, right? So I just learned, I'm like, wow, look how effective you can be when you just make it super simple and create an environment, right? And the environment wasn't just the doors, and I extended it to all the things that lead up to it. Having all my supplies in the car, everything ready well before, having, all of it, not doing certain things before I go to the doors that would keep me from going to the door. So I wasn't answering emails or taking phone calls or none of that. And it really is powerful because, in launching the book and all these other activities, it's not as easy as knocking on doors. I miss the simplicity. However, I know the experience, I know the feeling of what it's like to keep an environment that supports what my primary focus is. And so I'm always working because I do not have it handled, but I know where I'm going in terms of creating an environment to focus in on what's most important. So I don't know, did I answer your question? I get off on a tangent. I forget what the original
I think that
question
was good. Yeah, I wanted you to talk about how you prepared your environment, how you created, your box of all of your stuff and cleared away those distractions. I think those are simple things that we can do. We can look around. So for me, taking vitamins, if they are not on the counter, I will not take them because I don't see them. I forget. It is just not going to happen. So the vitamins sit on the counter, and then every morning I see them and then I remember to take them. Simple, right? But there are so many different little things like that we could do in our lives to help us build successful habits. There's a great example in the book Atomic Habit about how they just created more water. They put water bottles at the checkout stations at a restaurant. I think it was in a hospital, if I remember correctly. And simply putting the water in an easily accessible spot dramatically increased the sales of water and decreased the sale of soda. It was just placement. Because people saw the water, they didn't consciously make a healthier choice. That was what was easy and in front of them. And so therefore they made the healthier choice, right? And so many things like that can be applied in our life, whether it's for prospecting or healthy, like personal habits, or you name it. So.
Well, don't get me started. I could go on a whole thing about that. So
Okay,
I was
so
just
we'll
thinking
move
about
on.
all the things I do along those lines. I don't keep dessert. I don't keep ice cream in that. I love ice cream. I don't keep it in the house right. So by the way, if someone's listening, they're like, well, I can never be like Steven. He's obviously super disciplined and blah, blah, blah. No, man, I am as fallible as probably more than any other human being. I'm just aware that I'm like that. And it's the ice cream. Like I don't keep ice cream in the house because I love ice cream, even though I don't eat dairy, but they have great dairy free. And if it's in the house, I'm eating it. Like there's just no way around it. So I will not put it in the house. So it's like this, it's you're prospecting or what, if someone's thinking about writing a book, if someone's thinking about, starting a blog, you've got to create an environment in a time that's going to work for you and why you're going to do it, what's most important. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So the other part that goes along with this is keeping promises to yourself. Right. I think that kind of goes hand in hand. And I love that you talk about this. You talk about, the integrity of, if you say you're going to be on time, that you're really on time. If you're 5 minutes late, there's no excuse and you just own it, which by the way, this made me laugh. This is my favorite Steve Schultz story, actually, because Steve was really intense about this. Work started at 8 o'clock. It did not matter what happened. So one day I was on time to work. I got stuck in the elevator. The elevator broke. I was stuck in it and I was 5 minutes late for work and I still got reprimanded. And at the time I was so annoyed by this. Like, it wasn't my fault. I was here. I was in the building. Doesn't matter. You should have known better that maybe the elevator would break, right? And it was just such a great life lesson that ticked me off for years. And now as an adult, a grown adult, I appreciate it so much more. But so when when you talked about just having the integrity to say, I'm late, I said I was going to be on time and I'm not, doesn't matter why. And doing that for yourself, right? Like you talk about in the book, you need to have the integrity to keep promises to yourself. Do you want to expand on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think I didn't get this concept from Steve or there's multiple layers to it. So I remember there's another agent that that his coach was Steve for a long, long time. His name's Jeffrey Side in Beverly Hills, Bel Air, wherever he is these days.
Yeah.
And the guy's awesome. And I remember early in my career, I think he knocked on, if I remember, he knocked on doors a little bit and he did a bunch of other stuff. He did a lot of open house and he's right, super personable guy, not me at all. Right? I'm not him. But I remember him saying something like, well, if I just knock on doors today, if I just do what I'm supposed to do, then I sleep easy at night. And that was the first time I heard it first from him that way. It's not where I heard this distinction in integrity, but in terms of knocking on doors, I realized that if I just did what I was supposed to do every day, regardless of what happened, I would feel peaceful at night. I can think of some other experiences, I learned to run, when I've trained for my first couple of marathons, right? You do the training, period. I mean, knocking on doors kind of became the same thing. And if I knocked on doors, it didn't matter whether I did a deal or not that day. And therefore, every day could then win. Whereas many agents look at it the other way. How many appointments did I set? How many homes did I sell? Right? That's a very tough game to play because those things are out of our control. We cannot control whether people buy or sell. And this whole, I was listening to someone else talk about, my only goal is to set X number of appointments each day. Well, I mean, I guess you can sort of make people, you can sort of cajole and convince and persuade people to get an appointment. But is that really the best thing for me to do? Do I really need to go on an appointment for someone who's not moving, doesn't want to move, and can I really make them? I mean, I guess the only thing I really could control is how many people I talk to and how well I connect to them. How available am I to serve them in that moment? That I could control. And I felt like if I did that, it would all work out. And so going back to the original question or where we started, the promise to knock on doors, and I did that, gave me the peace to go to bed every night. And so the subtitle of the book is a handbook, a realtor's handbook for boundless opportunity and freedom. And that's really what the book's about. And because if you want to have the opportunity and freedom, and in this case, I'm talking about the freedom to be, then you've got to do what you said when you said you were going to do it. Or I should say, I have to do what I said when I said I was going to do it, because when I do that, I'm actually free in the moment, right? I don't have to think about what I'm doing. I said I was going to be on this podcast. You asked me what time, we agreed on a time, I showed up. And right when we don't show up on time, going back to the time example, we often feel guilty. And then we look for excuses, and then we're not present, and then we're trying to rationalize. And rather that's a cycle that just doesn't leave us fulfilled, I assert. So it was a long circle around, but
no, and I appreciate that because I think that leads well into what I wanted to talk about next. And I feel like the second half of the book, it could really be summed up by the journey is the reward. And as we talked about before we came on to the podcast, I really resonated with this. I think this is something we need to talk more about. So part one of that was, comparison is the thief of joy. So if you're looking at, well, so-and-so, is committed to doing X number of appointments and they're doing X. And then today I wasn't able to do that, and not honoring that you showed up for yourself and you took the actions that you needed to take and just finding the joy in that. Do you want to talk more about how that resonated with you and why you wanted to include it in the book?
I mean, maybe it's just me. I don't think it is, because I've worked with enough agents to know it's not just me. But for those of you listening, maybe it's just me. However, when I look around what other people are doing, I usually find myself disempowered, because the very next thing I do is comparing, well, what are they doing? Why are they doing that? My way's better, and blah, blah, and then I'm in this whole justification, explanation, as opposed to just choosing, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is how I serve my clients, and it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. And it doesn't mean that, like, in a year where the market's really tough, that you're not looking for some ideas on how to be more strategic in offers. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about our overall business, how we do business, the cars we drive, the clothes we wear, all the comparison stuff that we do. It's one of the many reasons why I'm not on social media, right? Because it's the ultimate comparison game. Well, look what they're doing. Look what they did with their kids. Look what they got. And it's like, it's just exhausting. And that feeling never leaves me a better human being. I'm not saying other people shouldn't be on social media. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, for me, that's my experience. And therefore, that doesn't leave me empowered, fulfilled, and free. And therefore, I don't do that. So anything that doesn't support those things, I don't do it.
Right. And then the other thing that you talk about is deciding when enough is enough. Do you want to talk more about that? Because again, like we talked about before, it's not just about being the number one. It's about defining your own definition of success for your life. And when you get there, getting off the hamster wheel and not just continuing to have more and more because you're comparing what other people have and you feel like you have to keep going. When did you learn this? And is it something you're still learning? And have you defined what enough is for you?
Well, I'll start by everything in the book I'm still learning. There's no mastery, right? This is it's the mountain with no top, as they say, right? There is no arriving. And so just when I think I have something handled, right, something comes up and smacks me in the head.
Life has a way of doing that, right?
Life has a way of doing that. So I don't want to say that I've mastered anything. And in this particular one, I think, it kind of came in multiple waves, but I would say one of the things that dawned on me is like maybe like 2016, I started doing some classes on door knocking. And I did fine. I always made six figures. And so for maybe the first 2 years I was in Colorado, I mean, those were hard, but, I always did well. But I had some, well, I should be, because I like to take time off, well, I should be working harder and I should have accomplished more and I should have done this. And so when I started teaching classes, sometimes in the classes would be some very high producing agents, agents that produce way more than I did. And at first I was a little uneasy. I'm like, who am I to be instructing them, so to speak? And that first year, what I realized is what most people were impressed with was my ability to persevere over a long period of time at the doors, right? It just seemed impossible to them that you could knock on doors for that many years and that many days and have that many conversations and be that good at talking to people. And that's what they came to hear. And I also realized that many people were not at peace with where they were at. So yeah, they had great production, but they were always worried that it was going to end tomorrow, that they were never going to sell another house again, that they, all the fears that we normally have as real estate agents. And it finally clicked on me that I didn't really have that too often. I mean, I had my own, still do have issues, right? I don't have everything handled all the time, but I was clear that, let me say a different way. By the example I use this in 2018, when I should have been doing more business that year than I was, I realized that a couple of things. One, throughout my entire real estate career at that point, which had been 13 years, things always worked out, right? So I had a 13-year history through some really crappy years. It always worked out. So I didn't really have to worry about that anymore. So yeah, I might have been in a slump, but no slump lasted forever. And there was no reason for it to continue that way. And the second thing I realized was that even if I had an extra $100,000 in that moment, it would have made really no difference in my overall fulfillment in life, because the things that made me most fulfilled had nothing to do with how much money I had. And, I had a nice car. Did I have the fanciest car? No. I have a nice place where I live. Is it the nicest? No, but it's really nice. I have some nice clothes. Would it have been better if I had an extra custom suit or some extra leisure athletic wear that's super pricey. No, that would have made no, like none of those things would have made any difference in terms of day to day, how my life would have been more fulfilled. It just would not have made any difference. That's how I got there, right? So I got to that at the bottom, not at the top. So I don't know if that helps anyone, but I also know that this year, if this year's my best year ever in real estate, it still doesn't mean anything.
Right.
It just doesn't mean anything.
I think it's really refreshing and I think important to hear somebody talk about the things that they value in their life that aren't tied to how much money they have. And I think, like you said, you're not on social media, so you get to avoid a little bit of that compare to the Joneses thing. But I really appreciate you being honest and sharing about how you define success in your life and where your values are. That's a conversation I would love all of us to have more often, because there's so much more satisfaction in counting your blessings outside of how much money is in your bank account. So thank you for that.
And I'm not saying that, I'm not here to preach anyone anything, right? Everyone can look for themselves. I'm only speaking from my own experience, and when I'm around other agents, and I'm around a lot of other agents who do a lot of business, and right, you can see it in their face. They're not free. They're not at peace. They're not fulfilled. They're not present, right, to what they have. I'm not saying all the time in all people, but I can see what's missing, the presence of which would make a difference in their life. And that's really what I was talking about in the book, is that if we take a few moments every day or every week to really look, we might be surprised what we see.
Right. Well, and all of this ties back to the consistency that you built into your business by doing one thing well, consistently all the time, even when it was boring, even when it was hard, because that gave you the freedom to feel secure in your business, set boundaries, and develop a more full and rich life instead of feeling like you were constantly on the hamster wheel. So a good lesson to share and learn. So I encourage everybody to check out Doors Open When You Knock. It's a wonderful book. You can get it on Amazon. Steven, is there any other way people can reach out to you?
As I said, I am not on social media. I have social media handles, and my niece does them. So if you DM me, like, she has to forward them to me. So like, it's hard for me to respond because I'm not on. It's really just a way to link to the website, which is doorsopenwhenyouKnock.com. And that is the best way to get a hold of me and find me. And
Wonderful.
Doors open when you knock.
Steven.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steven. It was so good to connect with you. I wish you lots and lots of success with this book and in your business and life. Cheers.